And we're live. Welcome to Amplify Your Impact. Risk taking risk. How do you stomach it so that you can actually own it all? That's what we're talking about in today's episode. Look, the truth is, as anyone listening in on the show or watching knows, entrepreneurial success opens you up to risks that you may not have anticipated or predicted. But the thing that I find fascinating is the cost of not taking those risks may be the thing that is helping you lose out on the potential success that your business really could have or that you really want altogether. So the question becomes, how do you take risks in an appropriate manner to get the success that you want? This is Amplify Your Impact. It's a show for entrepreneurs who are out to change the world with their purpose-driven businesses while increasing their wealth and balancing their personal health along the way. The warning that we always say at the start of the show is real-life entrepreneurship obviously is raw, and so is this show. So we record it live. It is unedited and unfiltered. So activate your mula bandha and let's go. I'm Josh Biro, as you guys know. Today's guest is someone that you absolutely must know because I have been inspired in the short number of visits and time that we've had together. Her book, which is right here, Own It All, is one of the best modern entrepreneur boutique fitness books I have ever read. And there's a lot of books out there. So, I mean, for what it's worth, I think that it's really something that you want to be checking out. And more than anything else, I have 147,000 questions that I want to ask you, Andrea, because I'm just so inspired by what you're doing. So I'd like to welcome Andrea Isabel Lucas. She's the founder and CEO of Bar and Soul, which is, if you don't know, a boutique chain of innovative yoga and bar studios. Author of the book, Own It All, as we just said. Also the host of your own podcast, I believe, also called Own It All. Is that correct? Yep. Yeah. Where she talks to badass, inspiring people about how to stop waiting for change and start creating it. So that's probably a lot of the angle where we're going for today. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show, Amplify Your Impact. I'm really excited to chat for today, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction.
So to kick us off, we always start with our anchor question. It's about impact itself. What is your impact? Or ripple effect. If you had to say, like, I'm on a mission right now in the world to create this impact, I mean, you're doing a lot, but what would you say that is?
I'm glad I didn't try to think too much about exactly how I would answer that in advance, because I think it shifts all the time. I think that if I had to boil it down, it really comes down to, I really want to help as many people as possible feel as empowered as they can to live fully self-expressed. So it comes down to your full potential and having, number one, all the dignity that you deserve to be able to live as fully self-expressed and in your full potential as possible. So that means So that's really what empowerment means to me, is like removing everything that's in the way of that, both externally and internally. And I'm really, really passionate about that for women. I'm really passionate about, I hate to say anti-oppression, but it is the most all-encompassing term. I only say hate because anti, I'd rather be for something than against it, but I'm pro-empowerment. I
love it. Dignity to live self-expressed is like, there's quote number one for today. I always think about coming out of the yoga world myself, of self-actualization, self-realization, and how much these words get thrown around, but they are a massive simplification of really that bigger purpose. So tell me a little bit more about dignity of self-expression, because I think dignity is such a poignant word and important. Why that word specifically? What's the difference between self-expression and dignity to be self-expressed?
I think dignity goes to the inherent worthiness of all people and the acknowledgement of the sacredness of every single person, that there's no committee of worthiness that says that this person deserves success more than somebody else, or they earned it, or they are more important, or whatever. I think a lot of us are holding ourselves back because we're waiting for that committee to, email us and invite us to the secret party that's happening somewhere. So I just think that once we have gotten in touch with our own worthiness, and not to say that that's a one and done thing, but once we are feeling worthy of fully expressing ourselves, then we're able to step into really, shining our light and being who we're here to be, and having the impact that we're here to have. And I think that I have to use the word dignity because I think that there's a lot of things culturally that work against a lot of folks. And that there's racism, there is sexism, there's homophobia, transphobia, ageism, a million other things that get in the way, not to mention just, imposter syndrome or childhood trauma, or all the things that could stop us from having our birthright, which is just to be able to show up in the way that sparks joy for us, and to contribute in the way that we feel called to contribute.
Well said. Recently, a friend of Michelle's actually was at our yoga business summit, Johanna, and she did an Enneagram workshop. And it was the idea of getting to know yourself from that specific angle. And I thought it was really fascinating. But what you're triggering for me in all of these external forces that might be working together or working against you, that is, especially on an entrepreneurial journey, it's like the dignity element it's like claiming of something. It's this realizing that is not you, that these other definitions that exist in the world are not who you are, and claiming that for yourself and really owning that, I think, is probably one of the more important, I'm sure that we'll get there, important things to do as an entrepreneur to actually get the success you want. Because I don't know, I'm thinking as you're saying this, I don't know anyone that I look up to as an entrepreneur that hasn't done what you're describing, that hasn't claimed their own dignity and that inherent right, your words, as a human being to get what they want and do something good in the world. Yeah.
And I think one of the aha moments for me around that was a piece of street art that you may have even seen before by an artist named Eddie Kalla. And it says, if you want to achieve greatness, stop asking for permission. And it was just a huge light bulb moment for me when I ever read that. At the time, I had a really amazing management role that I thought was going to be my dream job. I had the best mentors. They were awesome. And there was just something in me, this calling to go out on my own, to do something more creative, and I realized when I read that, oh my gosh, my mentors are not going to call me up and be like, Andrea, you've really grown as much as you're going to here. You should go off on your own. I was a great employee. Why would they do that? They weren't going to kick me out of the nest. I had to really empower myself to do that.
Right. I love it. You're making me think of, I watched an interview and you said that destined is a state of mind as opposed to destined as something that just is a result. So, but you can't be destined for anything if you don't have that state of mind to go after it, to actually take that first action. So I want to back us up because there's always so much more here already to unpack. And I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of the origin stories. I think it gives a lot of context to why you're such an empowering person to listen to and to read from and to look at as an entrepreneur. But one thing that you said in your book in the intro that hit me personally extremely hard, because I relate to it directly in a completely different situational way, but I really related to it as well, was you said, no one is coming to save me, not even my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that ties into what you're saying about claiming and the whole premise of your book of really own it all. Mm-hmm. That really hit hard for me because I grew up not in an affluent area, not with an affluent family, but I had no real problems. I never didn't get something I needed. I never did have a roof over my head. My parents were good parents. I had food, whatever. And it wasn't until later that I had some personal hardships, but they really caught me off guard because my parents had taken care of me so well that when I actually had a problem, I just kind of did think someone else would save me. And so when I read that, totally different context, it hit hard for me just because I remember a moment personally thinking like, oh, no one's going to fucking do this for you. Like any of this, whatever this is in life, you're going to have to do it yourself.
Yes.
And take action.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where I came up with the title Own It All. It is about ownership. It is about entrepreneurship. It is about going after what you want and having it, but it is also about taking radical personal responsibility. You know, that idea of owning something like, okay, that's on me. And you might have had a hardship that wasn't on you, that you had that hardship. And whatever you're going to do next from that place, that is on you. Like how you're going to respond to it is on you. So yeah, it's really about, and I think personal responsibility is a huge wake up call. It's not really that sexy. It doesn't sound, very enticing. Maybe it sounds, even some people right away go to, this sounds like victim blaming, and it really is not about that. And I think that there is a certain place a lot of us reach as we mature where we realize, oh, if I continue to blame my circumstances or other people, I get to be right, but I don't get to have what I want. So maybe it's time to move on from that.
One of the things related to what you're saying that we really talk about a lot in coaching, and even with me coaching coaches and stuff too, is this idea, and we're at such an interesting moment. This is a totally different subject that I'm sure maybe we'll get into today, but we're at such an interesting moment where we're about to go through sort of the death of knowledge itself being power. And it's really, in my opinion, the realization that knowledge isn't power because it's knowledge put into action. So to go back to related to what you're saying, as an entrepreneur, as an individual, as any element of your life, it's not about victim blaming at all, but rather than when something is the right path in front of you, or the action to take, at that point, you have to take responsibility for taking that action, because again, no one's gonna do it for you.
Right. It might not be fair that you are starting from wherever you're starting from. And if you don't start from there, you're not going to be able to go anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just that radical acceptance.
Fairness aside, it's just what it is.
Yes.
So exactly. back us up, because I think a lot of what we're talking around, there's some context that I think lends to your experience and understanding of this in your own unique way. We usually word it like this, like, what's your superhero origin story? Because my first encounter for everyone meeting Andrea was in a taxi in New York. And I can't remember why we were sharing the taxi, but probably because it was super expensive. And it's funny because we were both speaking on stage at the event there, and we both have our own businesses. But I always find people's backstories fascinating for how they've got to where they are in sort of this moment of success, because bluntly, you were one of the most articulate, well put together, professional, yet relaxed people I've ever encountered in the boutique fitness world.
Wow.
And it's really exciting, to meet people like
go
you that
on.
way. Go tell me more about it. It really is very inspiring. So, back us up. How does the current CEO of Bar and Soul, Andrea Isabel Lucas, and author and mom and all this, like, how did we get here? How did we arrive to this now?
Well, I think that I'll just start with some of the things that I've had to overcome. I did have a difficult childhood. I was a teen runaway. I was a teen mom. So I had a lot of challenges that I've overcome that sounded impressive now when you think about having built a multi-million-dollar business from scratch after overcoming some of those things. But at the same time, I had access to a great education. And, I was very fortunate. I was in the public school system, but, I had an awesome education growing up. I had parents that really cared about my academic performance and making sure that I went to college. And so even though I had my son at 19 and, my college plans were kind of waylaid, I was never not going to go. I was never not going to be successful. I think there was a lot of pressure put on me growing up that in a way I'm really grateful for, because I always felt like I had